Welcome to Karma Canvas, the dream within dreams, Sukra's journey from illusion to liberation. In the timeless teaching of the Yoga Vasistha, the great sage Vasistha sits before his young disciple Prince Rama, preparing to unveil one of the deepest mysteries of existence. The ancient forest around them is alive with spiritual presence. Birds sing their evening songs. The air is thick with the fragrance of jasmine and sandalwood. Vasistha has just explained a profound truth, that mind alone is all that exists, and when the mind is healed, the entire illusion of world appearance dissolves. Now Rama, his eyes wide with wonder and perplexity, leans forward with a question that will change everything.
Holy sage, I am profoundly troubled by what you have revealed. You say that mind alone is all this, and that when the mind is healed, the universe vanishes like a dream upon waking. But tell me, how is this possible? How can an entire cosmos of such apparent solidity and complexity exist entirely within the mind? How can all the worlds with their mountains and oceans, their stars and creatures, be nothing but the imagination of consciousness?
Rama, your question demonstrates the very obstacle that keeps all beings bound. You ask how the universe can exist within the mind, because you have already accepted as fact that the universe exists outside the mind, independent and objective. But what if I tell you that the external universe has never existed outside consciousness? What if the very distinction between inside and outside consciousness is itself a creation of the mind? Listen now, and I shall tell you a story that will illuminate this truth more clearly than 10,000 explanations. In ages past, there lived on a high mountain peak a great sage named Bhagavad, whose consciousness was so absorbed in meditation that he sat like a statue carved from the very stone of the mountain itself. His breath came so slowly it seemed not to come at all. His eyes, though open, saw nothing of the world. His mind dwelt in regions of reality that few mortals ever glimpse. Attending to this great sage was his son, a young man named Sukra, whose face was radiant with devotion and whose heart was pure as mountain snow. Day and night, without complaint or weariness, Sukra served his father's meditation.
One morning, as Sukra performed his duties with quiet devotion, his eyes turned toward the sky. There, moving gracefully through the clouds like a swan of light, appeared a celestial nymph of incomparable beauty. Her form seemed to be made of starlight and music itself. The moment their eyes met, something shifted in the depths of Sukra's being. A force he had never before experienced awakened within him, the force of desire, of longing, of the wish to possess and be possessed. The nymph, too, was struck by the radiance of this young sage. Her heart, though divine, was not immune to the power of beauty and grace reflected in Sukra's luminous form. In that single moment of mutual recognition, something extraordinary occurred. Overcome by the intensity of his desire for her, Sukra closed his eyes and, in his mind, began to follow her. And what followed was not merely imagination. It was a complete creation, an entire world that sprang into being from the power of his concentrated mind.
That moment, Rama, Sukra's mind, which had been kept pure and undiluted by his father's teaching and his own disciplined practice, unleashed its extraordinary creative power. Through the sheer intensity of his contemplation, he rose to the realm of heaven itself. What he beheld there was not a lesser realm. It was utterly real to his consciousness. He saw before him the radiant celestial beings, the gods in their full majesty, the divine elephant Airavata with its white radiance, celestial horses that moved like clouds, and the gardens of heaven with flowers that bloomed in impossible colors.
In heaven, Sukra encountered Indra himself, the king of the gods, seated upon his throne of unimaginable splendor, surrounded by the most beautiful nymphs in all the three worlds. When Indra saw this radiant young sage, he rose from his throne, a gesture of profound respect, and welcomed Sukra with honor, begging him to remain in the celestial realms for a long time. Sukra, his mind now entirely absorbed in this heavenly reality, agreed without hesitation. He had completely forgotten the mountain peak where his body sat motionless. He had forgotten his father's meditation. He had forgotten his own name and his earthly existence. In time, Sukra discovered the celestial nymph he sought, and when they looked upon each other, a joy arose within them that transcended all worldly understanding. They spent what felt like an eternity together in the pleasure gardens of heaven, enraptured in each other's presence. But here is the mystery that Vasistha wishes you to grasp, Rama. In heaven, where all wishes are immediately fulfilled, Sukra and the nymph remained together for a period equal to 8 entire world cycles. 8 world cycles, yet to them it felt like moments of bliss.
But know this, Rama, when his merit, accumulated from lifetimes of virtue, became exhausted, something remarkable occurred. Sukra fell from heaven as a ripe fruit falls from a tree. He fell with the nymph in his arms. As they descended, their celestial bodies transformed into dewdrops, which fell upon the earth and were absorbed into food grains. These grains were eaten by a pure Brahmana and through the mysterious workings of karma. Sukra was born as the son of that Brahmana and his wife. The nymph, too, was reborn, but she became a female deer with whom Sukra eventually had a son, to whom he became deeply attached.
But this was only the beginning of Sukra's long journey through the dream of samsara. Through the attachments and anxieties caused by his beloved son, he aged rapidly and died, filled with longing for the pleasures he had lost. Upon death, because his mind held the impression of earthly life, he was born as a great king in the next birth. Yet even royal power could not satisfy him. He died longing for spiritual peace and austerity. In the following birth, he became a holy man, but through countless embodiments, as Brahmana boys and hunters, as kings and fishermen, as swans and deer, as worms and plants, even as bamboo stems, Sukra wandered, driven by the impressions of his previous lives. Finally, Sukra was reborn as the son of a Brahmana named Vasudeva, well-versed in the scriptures. And in this embodiment, he devoted himself to intense austerity on the bank of the sacred river Samanga. There he stood in meditation, moment after moment, day after day, his body growing more and more emaciated. Yet something extraordinary was happening in his mind. Seated in front of his father Bhrigu, all these visions, all these lifetimes of experience, were unfolding in Sukra's consciousness like scenes in an endless drama. He contemplated each birth, each death, each ascent to heaven and descent to earth, each moment of pleasure and pain, all with such vivid intensity that he regarded them as absolutely real. Years passed, hundreds of celestial years, and Sukra's body decayed to skin and bone, assaulted by weather and the elements, inhabited by worms that nested in his eye sockets. Yet it was not consumed by beasts, for it stood directly before the still meditating sage Bhrigu, and Sukra's own yogic power had infused his body with the strength to endure. In his mind, he had lived countless lives, experienced infinite worlds, and been reborn again and again. All of this had occurred while his body sat motionless in a single place. All of this was the creation of consciousness alone. When Bhrigu finally opened his eyes after 100 celestial years of deep meditation, he beheld this horrifying sight. He saw not his son, but a corpse of such terror and decay that his mind reeled. In that instant of ignorance, Bhrigu's wisdom deserted him, and he was seized by rage and sorrow. Forgetting all he knew of truth, he resolved to curse time itself for this untimely theft of his son's life. And in that very moment, time, Yama himself, the lord of death and dissolution, manifested before the great sage in physical form. "O sage, how is it that one of your wisdom and understanding acts so unwisely? You are the knower of truth, yet you have lost your balance of mind. But I do not come with anger, I come with respect. Know that I am unaffected even by the fires of cosmic dissolution. Know also that I am merely fulfilling my natural function, that which has been ordained by the Lord since the beginning of time. I do not act from will or preference. Fire rises because that is its nature. Water flows downward because that is its nature. And I consume all created beings because that is my nature. This is not cruelty, it is the eternal law. But hear now the truth that will restore your wisdom, O Bhrigu. While you were lost in your meditation, your son did not die. He went far, far away in his own mind. The body you see before you is only the outer shell, a garment that remains because the consciousness within it went elsewhere. Sukra's consciousness rose to heaven, experienced celestial pleasures, fell from grace, and then, driven by karma, underwent a succession of births. He was born as a Brahmana boy, a king, a fisherman, a swan, a demigod, a yogi of great power, a hunter, a deer in China, a snake, a bird, and countless other forms. And now, in this very embodiment as Vasudeva, he stands on the bank of the river Samanga, engaged in the most intense spiritual practice. Then something miraculous occurred. Bhrigu entered into the eye of wisdom, and in an instant, he saw in his own intelligence the entire story of his son's transmigration. He witnessed all the births, all the worlds, all the experiences, and he understood with absolute clarity that his son had not been lost at all. He was not dead. He was engaged in the most sublime spiritual practice. Thereupon, Bhrigu and Time traveled together to the bank of the river Samanga, where they found Sukra still meditating, his mind in perfect tranquility, his consciousness radiant with the peace that transcends all understanding. When Sukra awoke from his meditation and recognized his father and the great Yama, he wept, not from pain, but from the fullness of realization. He beheld his previous body, now a corpse full of worms and decay, and he spoke these words of ultimate wisdom. Behold this body, once admired even by celestial nymphs, now the abode of worms and vermin. Yet I feel no sorrow, for I have passed through countless embodiments and endless experiences. I have been king and beggar, demon and saint, beast and god. I have enjoyed every pleasure and endured every suffering. Now I wish for nothing, nor do I wish to avoid anything. All that happens is the natural play of consciousness itself. In that moment, Sukra achieved complete liberation. The wheel of becoming ceased to turn, and Bhrigu understood at last the teaching that Vasistha now reveals to you, Rama. All this, every universe, every being, every lifetime, exists only as the imagination of the infinite consciousness. When this truth is realized, all bondage vanishes instantly, like darkness before the sun. The teaching, the entire universe, with all its apparent reality across countless lifetimes and worlds, exists only as the imagination of the infinite consciousness, and the moment this truth is realized, all bondage instantly dissolves. Subscribe to Karma Canvas for daily wisdom from ancient spiritual traditions.